Hello and welcome to Quill's Corner. My name is Katie, aka krquill, and we're going to be talking about a lot of random stuff here on this podcast, so make sure you grab your seatbelt and buckle up for the ride. So today I want to talk about how I don't think electric cars are the future. And I can already hear some of you in my comments saying, wait, you don't like electric cars, but they're eco-friendly. And if you know me on any other platform, you know that I am a huge fan of solar punk, which is a subgenre of sci-fi that focuses on hope, community, and a balance between nature and technology. And I think it's a really neat idea, and I'm also a really big advocate for climate change, and I firmly believe that that is something that is happening and that we need to be worried about, because we're not even in a state of global warming anymore. We're in a state of global boiling now. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to be a frog in a pot. No, thank you. If you get that saying, we can be friends. But I think a lot of people are really gung-ho about electric cars because they're eco-friendly and because they think that that is where our future is headed. And that it's a really cool piece of technology, which it is. Trust me, I love seeing electric cars around my city. I think they're small and cute, and sometimes I laugh because I think about trying to fit like objects into the car to try and move them places, and I pity those poor electric car users for the lack of space that they have because electric cars are so small right now. But I think when a lot of people think about our future when it comes to technology and how it's going to look, right now I think that still is kind of riding the capitalist wave. And there's been a lot of people nowadays who have really started to kind of have like eyes open to how the CEOs are just kind of like sucking our souls out through money, and how Reagan era economic policy has not benefited the masses but has benefited the richest of us. And I think continuing to have cars, even electric cars, continues this kind of CEO corporation supremacy of how American culture is structured and how people should live their daily lives. And you may be thinking, how the hell do you get from electric cars to corporations structuring our daily lives? And I just want y'all to think of this one phrase that I'm sure that you've heard before if you're an American. If you're not, I don't know if this is spread to other countries, but this is a thing that I have heard time and time again growing up, and that is time is money. And that is how American culture is, specifically white American culture. I'm going to call out like my own folks on this because this is largely a white thing. I had one of my colleagues who's not white text me the other day and ask me, okay, if somebody says that a party is at 7, is it okay for me to arrive at 7:30, or do I need to be there at 7? And I go, well, you need to be there at 7. They're going to expect you to be on time. If they gave you that start time, they expect you to be there at 7 and not 30 minutes late unless you have a reason to be late, which is perfectly fine. You just need to tell them that you're going to be late, and that's considered polite. And whenever we were texting about that, and I was considering it and how it kind of ties into all of this that I think about, there's this culture that is created around the idea of time is money, where you are expected to essentially jam-pack your day outside of the house and inside the house too. Like, you're expected nowadays to do 1,000,001 side hustles and become an entrepreneur or work a 9 to 5 that is ridiculously far away from your house. And so having a car allows for this time is money mindset, because a car is a convenience right? It's a personal convenience. Because I have a car, I can get anywhere in my city in 20 minutes or less. Really, it's 15 minutes or less, but I'm taking into consideration going to like the very far edges of my city. And of course, my city isn't very big. But if I were to take, let's say, the bus instead of driving myself somewhere, and let's say to drive myself from here to somewhere else in my city, it took me 15 minutes. If I were to take the bus, it would take me closer to 40 or more because the bus systems here are crap. They are terrible. They are not well funded and they are not well regulated. And they're really not set up with people in mind. And not even the buses that run for the university are all that great. So taking public transport also really isn't an option unless you want to create more time between when you need to be somewhere and when you leave your house. And so considering if you've ever worked an opening shift somewhere and you've had to get there at like 6 a.m., and imagine you having to take the bus instead of taking your car, and let's say it takes you 40 minutes via bus to get where you need to go. That means that you have to leave the house by 5:20 in the morning. And let's say you have to walk to the bus stop. And that's like an extra 10 minutes. So you back it up to 5:10 that you have to leave the house. And then, of course, you have to wake up before that. So maybe you wake up around 4:30. Maybe you're really fast at getting ready and getting breakfast together. But it's taking you almost an hour to get to your workplace. Whereas if you have a car and it takes 15 minutes to drive there and you need to be there at 6, you can leave your house by like 6:40 and be fine. Or 5:40 and be fine. And so having a car is a convenience, and it puts on the expectation to people that they need to be places on time and that they need to kind of jam-pack their schedule. And on top of that, let's be honest, cars cost way too much for literally everyone. Because I know my fair amount of people who don't own cars or will only buy used cars. And I know very few people who have ever bought like a new car off the lot. Heck, I have only had one new car and it cost about $32,000 whenever my parents got it for me, because that was my first car right out of the gate in high school. They wanted me to have a good car, and I'm very privileged in that fact that this car will last me 20 plus years and I will be fine, and I won't have to buy something until I'm like in my 40s sometime. But having a car is also really expensive, not only because you have to first buy the car, and if you can't pay full price whenever you buy it, you have to get a loan for the car and you have to pay it in payments. And so that also has interest on it, which racks up, which means that you're paying even more for the car. And on top of that, you have to take care of the maintenance, and then you have to fill it with gas, which both also cost money, and the prices of gas are continually just creeping upwards as we continue on. So cars kind of do two things in the grand scheme of things in American society, at least. Is one, it puts people on unequal footing and creates kind of upholds this time is money economy and way of living life. And it also creates a wealth gap, because if you don't have the money to pay for a car and then maintain that car, then you're probably kind of living either paycheck to paycheck, or you're kind of on the lower end of the socioeconomic scale, which is perfectly fine. I know a lot of people who don't have cars and are perfectly fine not having cars, but that requires the city that they're in to be friendly to them as a person and meet their transportation needs. So, for example, because I have experienced this, in 2019, I got the opportunity to study abroad in Estonia, specifically at the University of Tartu from August until December, which, if you recall, was the semester right before the COVID-19 pandemic broke out in 2020. And so I was really lucky in that I got to do that. But Estonia is one of those countries that, although they do have cars, they don't have as many of them as people in the US. And they're not really a necessity like they are for people in the US. Whenever I used the bus system there, the biggest struggle that I had was getting a bus card, and that's because everything was in Estonian, and I do not speak or read Estonian. So I had to figure all of that out, and that was an extra layer, was the language barrier for me. But still, I was able to get a bus card for 15 euros and used it the entire time I was there in Tartu. And anywhere that I didn't need to take public transportation to get there, I could walk. I could walk to my university classes, and the walk was like 20 minutes, but I really enjoyed it. Even when it was freezing cold out, I liked being able to walk everywhere and not have to worry about cars or sidewalk space, because those sidewalks are also so much bigger. And once you get closer to the university, there aren't really it's not a space built for cars, it's a space built for people, which I really love, because we're people, right? We want spaces that are built for us and not these giant metal machines that we are driving everywhere. And I really enjoyed living in Estonia, partially for that reason and for many other reasons. But I think our future here in the United States isn't electric cars. It's better public transportation and better walkable spaces built for people and not for cars. And I really, of course, have a really imaginative mind. If you haven't heard of me from other platforms, I had a book come out on March 28th called The Century Soldier, which is a solar punk action book set 100 years into the future, and kind of is this imagination of what if our city became solar punk in terms of setting. And in that city, there are no cars at all. There are a couple of public transportation options. There's a above ground train system that is super fast. And then there are also some streets where you can canoe down the streets. But everywhere else in that city is walkable, because that was something that I enjoyed a lot whenever I was living in Estonia, and something that I honestly really wish I could do here. I love walking so much, and I would walk to the university if I had the time to do so, and if my city was walkable and made for people and not made for cars. There are some streets that are not too far outside my apartment that have literally no sidewalks on the side of the road. There are no sidewalks anywhere to be seen. There's the curb and then grass, no sidewalks. And I always think about, if I were to have to walk to the university, I would be so scared that a car would just run me over, and that I would slip off the curb into the street and just pass away. Peace out, Katie. No more existing. But I would think it'd be really cool if our first steps were to at least upgrade the systems we already have. I think a bus system works really well and could work really well in this city. But I recognize that our bus system is very poorly maintained, and I'm sure that it doesn't get as much money as it probably could and should to be effective public transportation for the city itself. And on top of that, I really think infrastructure should go kind of the opposite way that it's been going, where we're not building spaces for cars, but we should build space for people. And so if you also think about less roads being around means less road upkeep, which means that more money could be going to public transport or to support the new infrastructure for people. Because again, I would love to walk to class. I would love to walk to the university. I don't care if it takes me like 40 minutes to walk over there. I would love to do it. But it's not feasible all the time. And it's definitely not feasible right now whenever there is not the infrastructure to support it. So while I really love electric cars, and I think they're supremely cool, and I think there are a lot of really cool directions that we're going with technology right now, I don't think electric cars should be our future. I think it should be sidewalks with trees and bushes and other plants, which is a whole other video that I will rant about. And public transport that actually works for people and is actually supported by our local governments and not just funded, kind of, you know? I would really love to see it. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Quill's Corner. If you would like to support the podcast, make sure you hit that subscribe and that like button down here. Leave me a comment letting me know what you would like to hear me ramble about next. And make sure you head on over to my other accounts linked in the description below to support me in all of these other places. And if you're interested in my book, The Century Soldier, that is now available to order in ebook and paperback format. Thank you for joining, and I will catch you on the flip side.